Good evening, everyone. Ariel Helwani joined once again by Chael Sonnen and Brett Okamoto as we wrap up UFC 254, the final Fight Island event of 2020. They expect to be back in 2021, but for now, we say goodbye to Fight Island. And what a way to close out this show. Khabib Nurmagomedov returns to action. He submits Justin Gaethje in the second round with a triangle choke, and then afterwards, a very emotional Khabib openly weeping in the center of the cage, obviously thinking about his late father, Abdul Manap, takes off his gloves, puts them on the mat, and then announces to the world that he has retired. 29-0, an unbelievable career, 13-0 inside the octagon, only lost one round officially. And now he says he's done. He had a promise with his mother that he would not continue without his father. So for now, the Khabib Nurmagomedov era is over. There's so much to talk about. In addition to all of that, Robert Whittaker looked fantastic in the co-main event against Jared Cannonier. We shall wrap it all up here on the post show. First off, Chael, I will ask you about Khabib's performance. Before we get to the retirement stuff, let's talk about what actually happened in the fight against Justin Gaethje. What did you make of what he did there against Justin tonight?
So, guys, two-sided answer to that, okay? In fact, let me start with the other side, which is Justin Gaethje. What did he do? Look, Justin looked extremely defensive. He looked as though he went in there single-minded, which was to not be taken down and not have his back against the fence. Now, he told us ahead of time, the number one thing I need to do is kick Khabib, and number two is keep my back off the fence. I think he succeeded in that. I only share with you, when a top-level athlete changes his style to accommodate or in fear of something his opponent's going to do, things tend to unravel. With that said, Khabib had an incredible pressure. Khabib had an incredible jab. We've been hearing about this jab. We've been hearing about how good his boxing is. We haven't had to see it. It's always been a plan B that we've been told is somewhere within the chamber, but he's never had to draw it out of the holster. Look, he had it tonight. And I also think that if we're paying Khabib respects, it's important that we look at how dynamic this fight was. Not only did he do the job on his feet, he did it from top. And by the way, surprisingly, he put himself on bottom, ultimately finished the fight. Showed all three facets of the fight game and proved he was the champion.
Brett, sometimes in these moments, we become prisoners of the moment and we say, this is the best this, the best that. I feel right now, maybe I'm a prisoner of the moment. I feel like that was his best performance in the UFC, and that's saying a lot considering what he's done as of late. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I agree just because of, well, first of all, how dominant it was. And second, I'll be a little bit, I guess, easier on Justin's strategy than maybe Chael was, and that at least it forced him to do something else. I mean, look, I've never been in a situation where I'm fighting an undefeated fighter. Chael has almost essentially by fighting Anderson Silva, so maybe he knows better than I do. But at least you got to at least test him and see if he's got something else. You've got to shut down what he does so well. If he's been doing the same thing over and over again to all these other guys, at least Justin did that. I mean, he forced Khabib to fight a different game plan than what we've ever seen before. And I think that's why we're saying that this was his best performance, because we got to see another element of his game. I mean, the pressure of Khabib, we always talk about it in terms of what it looks like on the ground. Tonight, we got to see what it looks like on the feet. I mean, he even when he wasn't getting takedowns, even when he wasn't looking for takedowns, just the amount of pressure and the amount that he put Justin Gaethje on his back foot, that to me was like, Khabib, you could win every fight just like this. I mean, you wouldn't even need to take guys down. You could just make their lives miserable on the feet because of the amount of pressure that you bring. So I thought it was incredibly impressive, and it just makes this retirement announcement that much more hard to swallow, because this guy is at the absolute top of his game right now.
Yeah, and so young still, right? 32. He hasn't taken that much damage throughout his entire career, let alone his UFC career. Chael, could I ask you about the transitions on the ground, especially in the second round en route to that triangle? I mean, that was just beautiful stuff. We all know how good he is on the ground. That was top level, beautiful. Again, doesn't allow his opponent to breathe on the mat. I was just blown away by how he finished Gaethje, not the actual finish, which, by the way, Jason Herzog missed multiple taps, but the route to the finish, if you get what I'm saying.
Yes, and guys, it's very remarkable. Look, the average fan isn't going to notice it, but they're also not going to be impressed. They get the punches and they get the kicks. They might even get a big slam takedown. Look, for the intricacies to explain what Khabib Nurmagomedov is doing on top is very hard for me rhetorically to tell you. And I say this as a black belt. I say this as a guy who studies jiu-jitsu and loves jiu-jitsu. Khabib is doing something with head position. He's doing something with chest position. He's got an underhook on one side. He's passing your guard on the other and coming back to full mount. I realize that's not going to get oohs and ahs from the crowd, but guys, please allow me to pay him my respects. These are techniques that not only can I not do, I'm not trying to insert myself in this, but as a guy that loves the sport, not only can I not do, guys, I can't teach it. I've never been taught it. I have never been in a practice room. I have never been to a seminar. I've never watched a DVD that shows the techniques that he's doing to attack one side, post so your opponent can't move while clearing the other side. Guys, this is beyond black belt level stuff.
So, Brett, you spoke to Khabib leading up to the fight multiple times, and obviously there was talks of, 30-0, and there was talks of George St. Pierre, and, maybe he'd go past 30. There were initially talks that he wouldn't continue following the passing of his dad. How surprised are you that he decided to retire tonight? Again, after the victory, he takes off his gloves, very, very emotional, and says he's done. He made a promise to his mom that he wouldn't continue without his dad. He wouldn't go to number 30. He wouldn't try for the GSP fight or any other fight. He's done. And I think a lot of people are believing him right now. And I'll ask both of you if you believe, but right now, how surprised are you that he made that announcement in the cage?
I was surprised as it was happening, even as you saw his guys come in and start to take off his gloves. And even in that moment, I was like, I see them taking off the gloves. And I can't remember Khabib really doing that previously, but there's no way he's going to retire in the octagon right now. And I think that's just a natural human reaction because of what we were just talking about, how good he looks. I mean, there's no way. He's talked about 30-0 for one. He's talked about George St. Pierre. George St. Pierre looked like a realistic possibility if that's what he wanted for his retirement fight. So he's just got so many more things that he could potentially do. They're right there waiting for him. And he looked so good tonight. Even as he was pulling off his gloves, I was like, he just must want to take his gloves off. I did not think he was going to retire. But since, he has spoken about it, and now that I've had some time to kind of digest it, it actually makes perfect sense, man. I mean, the entire time that we knew Khabib, throughout his entire career, one of the biggest storylines about him was his relationship to his father. I mean, we continue to say that over and over again. It's not just a father-son relationship. It's a mentor relationship. It's a coach relationship. It's a best friend relationship. His father meant everything to him. And so now to continue to do the thing that they did together the most, and what, Abdulmanap was the driving factor and the driving influencer in Khabib's athletic career, when he says, I can't do this without my father, I can't come here without my father, it actually makes a ton of sense. And looking at it in hindsight, maybe it is something that we should have seen coming a little bit more.
Chael, what were you thinking when you saw Khabib in the cage crying and then afterwards saying that he was done?
No matter what I thought, it will not trump the line that Brett just said when he said, I saw him take his gloves off. And I thought, oh, he must want to take his gloves off. Look, I loved it, guys. Look, from a promotional standpoint, Vince McMahon, rule number one, give the audience what they want, never give them what they're expecting. In all fairness, I've always taken Khabib at his word. Ariel, I always thought he was going to go to 30-0. I thought maybe there was a chance of St. Pierre, but either way, I thought we would get to 30-0. The fact that he retired on top, not to mention, I liked what he said. He said, look, Poirier and Conor are getting ready to fight, and I beat both of them. I mean, he left his staple on the sport. And the number one rule, by the way, guys, you want to leave the sport better than the way you found it. You never leave the company hanging. You never leave anybody holding the bag. The fact that he let a mega fight like Conor and Poirier get set, presumably to be the one to go pick up his championship, I respected that.
Do you believe him, Chael? Do you believe that this is it for him?
Yeah, I most certainly do. I don't know what other game he would be playing, in all fairness. I mean, look, I think there was some major talk of St. Pierre. To get St. Pierre to come back and have it not be for a championship, of which, by the way, now it would not be for a championship. I don't know where else he goes. I think that Khabib made a very good point, by the way. When he says the top guys are Conor and Poirier, they're already booked. I'm not sitting around waiting. And by the way, I finished them both. I mean, in all fairness, he makes a good point.
Yeah, and the GSP fight, I think, was the only one left out there. I mean, obviously, you could run it back with Conor, and I think it would be a fascinating fight. The GSP fight would be a lot of fun, considering it's the two GOATs. I had a chance to talk to GSP right after the fight. He is not upset about Khabib walking away. He sent him some very nice wishes and said he wouldn't even try to convince him to come back like Khabib tried to convince GSP to not retire around a year and a half or so ago, because he understands the circumstances. And he says, I'm good. If this is it, I'm good. I'm all good. And also, GSP is a guy who's talked about retiring on top when your stock is the highest. Well, you can't argue with the way in which Khabib has done this. His stock couldn't be higher right now. Brett, do you believe this was the last time? Because we all know in retirements and in MMA, guys walk away. And by the way, guys, like, I can't help but think of Michael Jordan, right? Michael Jordan retired after his father passed away. And then he went to go play baseball, and he came back. And the first title that he won after he came back was on Father's Day and was openly weeping. I mean, so many similarities there between the greatest basketball player of all time and maybe the greatest MMA fighter of all time. And so here's Khabib walking away. Do you think at some point when he's 35, 34, 36, he says, you know what, I'll come back? What do you think, Brett?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, and what Chael mentioned is that he doesn't see any other game that he could be playing. I don't either. I don't think this is any. If he does come back, it's not because of gamesmanship. It's because of he was just too emotional. That he made a decision based on emotion, and then he decides later on that I want to fight again. It's something that I really want or feel like I need to. There was some part of my legacy, but there's really not. I don't see any type of hole that can be poked in Khabib's legacy where someone can say, you weren't the greatest fighter of all time. You didn't beat this guy. I mean, he checked off all of those boxes. Justin Gaethje was the last box, really. And I mean, you can say there will be people out there that say, well, he never fought Tony Ferguson. Well, I don't think he has to fight Tony Ferguson. He's made his point. He has, at this point, where the division is at, he has made his point. No one can say any differently. And I think that will allow him to sleep well at night. And honestly, I always got the sense from Khabib that there was a part of him that was looking forward to the end of his career. We knew that he wasn't going to be a guy who fought late. And I just always felt like there was a part of him that was looking for it. And he said it, in the interview with me a couple of weeks ago, that he was looking forward to a new life. He was looking forward to a new chapter. He was looking forward. He doesn't need a lot. We know money's not an issue for him. He doesn't need the attention. He doesn't like the attention. He doesn't like doing interviews. So I think that he's going to be very happy in this decision. Quite frankly, I don't think he's ever going to second guess it. That's my guess, but I just don't see a lot of reasons for Khabib to second guess this decision.
Yeah, Chael, and let me reiterate, I don't think he's playing any game as well. I think this is very, very sincere. And how can you deny the circumstances, right? I mean, how can you look past it? It seems like the perfect time for him to go away and just call it a career. And he seems very content. He's seen and done it all and made all the money possible. And so now as we transition to a lightweight division and a sport without Khabib, what do you do with that belt, Chael? Because now the UFC faces a very interesting predicament. And by the way, should note, Dana White saying at the post-fight press conference that Khabib broke his foot 3 weeks ago and didn't tell anyone. So that just puts the performance on a different stratosphere, the fact that he was fighting with a broken foot. So Chael, what do you do with that lightweight title? Dana doesn't like when people surprise him with a retirement, right? Like sometimes it's happened before, just as GSP. He doesn't love when that happens. And now you've got one of the biggest stars in the sport walking away saying, I don't want the belt anymore, I'm done. And you got the Conor Poirier fight coming up. You just signed Michael Chandler. You got Ferguson out there. What do you do with that belt?
All right, fellas, now this is just for fun. I think we would all be willing to wager whatever they let us bet that we put Poirier and Conor for the title, but then we don't have a conversation, right? Look, there's something meaningful happening with Michael Chandler. There's a rumor that he's going to be fighting Tony Ferguson. I think that's a fairly good option. Not as good of an option, but I bring to you guys, you never know what Conor's going to do. You guys will recall the night that Conor lost to Nate Diaz and says, give me that one again. And everybody goes, yeah, you got it, Conor, but this time we'll do it at 155. You're more natural weight class. And Conor goes, no, excuse me. I don't need any favors, and I don't want any favors done from. They redid it at 170. And I only bring that to you for a talking point, but there is a chance that Conor McGregor says, I don't want in those shoes. I don't want in the shoes that Daniel Cormier, by example, had to go with an asterisk in the fans' minds because John Jones was in the principal office. I'm not predicting for you fellas that's going to happen. I'm predicting for you guys that there's a conversation piece that before Dana just says, okay, I'm going to hang this belt up, you are going to have to talk to two participants that have a pretty big say in the matter.
What do you do, Brett?
Yeah, I make that fight in January for the title. And then I think what you try to do is you try to do what they attempted to do on this card. And you book Tony Ferguson in the co-main event and you have him fight Michael Chandler. I think that's how you build up the lightweight division. You have all four guys fight on the same night. I think Justin Gaethje is still obviously very, very relevant. I think he'll have his say. It would not surprise me if he worked his way back to a title shot within the next year. So I think you still got a very, very interesting division. And you got a perfect way to move. I mean, because look, the loss of Khabib is massive. It's massive to us as fans. It's massive to the company. It's massive to just the sport in general. Khabib retiring is a big deal that sends ripples throughout the entire thing. But one thing that will make us feel a lot better is if UFC comes out and tells us, hey, Conor McGregor is fighting Dustin Poirier for the lightweight championship. And in the co-main event, Michael Chandler is going to fight Tony Ferguson. That's a great way to get over the loss of a guy who was really revered throughout the entire sport.
Yeah, and at the post-fight press conference as well, Dana didn't really talk all too much about the future. Khabib didn't attend the press conference. Gaethje didn't attend the press conference. So a lot of questions that we will be able to ponder over the following weeks. We'll close this discussion up, Chael, with this question. True or false, in your opinion right now, Khabib is the pound-for-pound king?
No, of all time, no, I don't
No, no,
think
no.
so.
Right now, just active fighters. Like he said on Tuesday, I want to be the pound for pound number one. Do you agree with that? Does he leapfrog over John Jones?
I understand the question. The answer is yes.
Okay, but the second, it was a two-parter. Pound for pound all time? No.
No, look, I'm just, guys, I don't want to be the skunk at the garden party, but in all fairness, the way this ridiculous list of pound for pound works, a period of time goes by and then you sit around and you start to argue resumes. It never comes down to who actually has the best skills and who has the best resume. If you live in an era of which, and this era has a champ phenomenon, and you do not compete in that era's rules of champ, when you're given the opportunity, you cannot win. George St. Pierre was not only champ, he called out this champ for the third title. St. Pierre wins in the long run. Right now, I look like a jerk. In the long run, St. Pierre wins.
I appreciate the honesty. Brett, that first question, pound for pound number one?
Yeah, I had him number one coming into the weekend even. And the way I look at pound for pound is that if everybody weighed the same, who would I, and I needed to pick a winner. I had to pick a winner. My life depended on it. I would go with Khabib Nurmagomedov. I think he was the surest thing, clearly. I mean, the guy never lost in 29 fights. I think the idea of the greatest fighter of all time is interesting because I think John Jones is still very much in the conversation. Obviously, George is right there as well. And hey, if this is what makes it so fascinating, that John is moving up to heavyweight. If he moves up to heavyweight and does what Chael just said, most dominant light heavyweight champion of all time, and then goes and wins a title at heavyweight against much bigger guys that he'll be competing against, then I think that this narrative changes, which is crazy. The idea of the greatest fighter of all time shouldn't be something that changes, every other month. But I think that there's a possibility that right now, today, I'm saying Khabib is the greatest fighter of all time, and within the next, 6 to 12 months, I'll be saying it was John Jones.
All right. So that's the story as far as the main event is concerned. Now let's talk about the co-main event, guys. Wow, what a win for Robert Whittaker. He wins via decision, 29-28 on all three judges' scorecards. There were some interesting moments where it looked like Cannonier might have gone finished. He came back strong towards the end. One can't help but wonder what would happen if it was a 5-round fight to determine the number one contender, potentially at 185. But in the end, Whittaker wins his second in a row since the Israel Adesanya fight last October. Chael, what did Whittaker do that worked so well in this fight?
Look, Cannonier looked awesome. I have got to tip my hat. If you want to talk about heart and grit and you want to talk about somebody fighting above their abilities, I really thought it was Cannonier. I thought the talk coming into this fight was very presumptuous. I think that Cannonier was the foregone conclusion for a number one contender because Izzy Adesanya called his name. I think if we were to back the tape up 12 to 15 months when Robert Whittaker was the world champion, I told you they were going to fight then. You said, well, Jared Cannonier's fighting for the world championship. I think you would all scratch your head. That was only one fight removed. I mean, there was one loss in there for Whittaker. What I'm trying to say is, guys, in a stand-up battle, there's only been one athlete ever to stand fisticuffs with Robert Whittaker and come out on top, and that was Adesanya. Cannonier never had a shot in this fight to go in and take Whittaker down and hold him there, something that Yoel Romero failed to do in 10 rounds of trying. It was not a great match. That was the lock of the night. Whittaker did what he needed to do. He stayed in the pocket. He pumped that jab, but Cannonier, to his credit, who was outmatched skill for skill, was dog tough, and he really earned my respect tonight. I'd like to give him that compliment here because I realize the loser never gets it, but Cannonier did something special, heart-wise. Grit-wise, Cannonier looked great.
That's amazing. I just asked you about Whittaker, who I thought looked phenomenal, and you spent the entire time answering a question and praising Cannonier, who lost the fight. I thought 30-27, not taking anything away from him, but I thought it was pretty clear-cut 30-27 for Whittaker. How did you score the fight, Brett? And do you think if this was a 5-round fight, considering how it was ending there, and it looked like the tide was turning a little bit, that the end result would be different?
I had it 29-28 for Whittaker. I did give Cannonier the first round, but I was right on the fence. I thought that there was an argument to be made for either side. I'm not going to argue if you had it for Whittaker. And as far as the last 2 rounds, what was interesting is the leg kicks. The leg kicks won the first round, I thought, for Cannonier, and he was continuing to land them even when Whittaker won those next 2 rounds. So if Whittaker's mobility was compromised in the 4th and 5th, then I think that creates a big question of who has the advantage in the 4th and 5th rounds. But it wasn't a 5-round fight; it was a 3-round fight, and so Whittaker had the right strategy. He clearly won the fight, whether you give the first round to him or Jared. So I said it before, man. I thought, and still think that Robert Whittaker winning this fight, he should be the number one contender. And thankfully, I am happy to hear Dana White say that is the plan, because that's a rematch that I'm very interested in.
So you would, just to follow up on that, you would book Izzy versus Whittaker 2 right away?
I would, and I know that no one is getting too excited about that, but at the end of the day, man, sometimes that's just the name of the game. Like, you can't have a blockbuster fight every single time, and I think by the time this fight gets arrives again, by the time a rematch arrives and we have time to talk about it a little bit, look, nobody wants to talk about why they lost the first fight, especially a guy like Robert Whittaker. He does not want to talk about that he was burned out. He doesn't want to talk about anything that was going on in his life around that time because of, everyone points at him and says you're making excuses. And these guys are all pretty sensitive to that. And Whittaker is just an honorable guy who doesn't like to say that. But I'm telling you right now, just knowing Robert Whittaker the way I know him, and I think you guys would probably agree, he's not a guy who would make this up. I mean, he's been very, very honest in saying that he was burned out on mixed martial arts the first time they fought. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm picking him in the second fight. I mean, obviously, Adesanya has looked terrific, but to me, that is a big reason to watch the second fight. It's a big key. It's a big question mark that needs to be answered, because Robert Whittaker, if he was being burned out on the sport, then he wasn't at his best, and you have to be at your best to beat Israel Adesanya. So now he looks refreshed. He looks happy. We're all commenting on it. We're saying, look, Robert Whittaker is so loose. He's so ready to go during fight week. I want to see that Robert Whittaker fight Israel Adesanya. And again, I know it's not going to be the biggest fight on the UFC's calendar, but competitively, Robert Whittaker has won 11 of his last 12 fights. It's a spot he deserves. And I do think that he's capable of winning that fight. So it's one that I'm interested in seeing.
All right, Chael. So if you could book Izzy's next fight, do you do Izzy versus Whittaker too?
Okay, I like what Brett said on the theme when he said not every fight is going to be a blockbuster fight. In all fairness, there's better and more things you can do with Adesanya. I will tell you, in terms of rematching and be able to tell a story, the question is quite simple. What's going to be different, and where is Whittaker better? And guys, I would point to the takedown that he got tonight. I've never seen Whittaker break out a takedown the way that he mixed it up. I think it showed an evolution in his game. I may be slight, it may be hairs here, but that's what a fighter is, a guy that gets up and wants to get back and shows that he's improved on something. I think that Whittaker versus Adesanya makes sense. I'm not as excited about it as I could be for Adesanya versus Jones. I do think to show respect and integrity to the rankings, it makes sense.
Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from Whittaker. I think it might be a hard fight to sell. We have seen, relatively quick rematches, but when someone, loses a title fight and then comes back, but not often when it's the same guy holding the belt, like usually there's a change there. So I'm curious to see if they go that route. We do have a Jack Hermansson, Darren Till fight potentially happening later on this year. Till has a lot of fans and is very popular. Hermansson's coming off a really nice win as well. So I wonder if they wait and see. And also Izzy has talked about moving up to 205. So I don't think Izzy is too keen on fighting Whittaker again, considering he just did it, but maybe they ultimately convince him to do so. So that was the co-main event story. There were a lot of fun fights on this card, a lot of great performances. You had Alexander Volkov with a tremendous win over Walt Harris. What about Phil Hawes with the second fastest finish for a UFC middleweight debutant? You had Lauren Murphy with a solid win. Magomed Ankalaev. I mean, the main card delivered. There's no doubt about that. Bam Bam Tuivasa 2.0 with a great knockout. Casey Kenny and Nathaniel Wood I could just go down the whole card. Is there any other fight, Chael, that you want to highlight, spotlight, a fight, a moment, a performance, something that you want to talk about before we say goodbye?
Any other fight? Did you leave me with any other fights? For goodness sakes, I think you named them all. Guys, I would like to mention this. I know it wasn't totally to your question, but Brett, we were talking earlier about the pound for pound and how you're going to assess that. The pound for pound isn't always fair. I'd like to throw this in because I think when Brett brings up John Jones, that's certainly a great induction. One of the things that takes away is John is so dominant. We never see him fighting off his back. I only bring him up because we've also never seen that from Khabib. Now, we haven't seen it because he's so good. He's never been put in a precarious position. I thought that Khabib being in two bad positions tonight and forcing them both, one at the end of the first round, one at the finish of the fight, forcing them both and showing work off his back was very impressive. I don't totally have a point there, Ariel, but I thought I would make it.
Okay, so you don't want to highlight any other performance.
You didn't leave me anybody.
I just thought maybe you had a moment that you wanted to talk about.
I just did.
All right.
That was what I wanted to talk. Khabib showing another dimension. I wanted to mention it.
Okay, I thought I was referring to the other fights, but fair enough. Khabib deserves his shine. Brett, what about you? Any other moment outside of the top two?
I liked Ankalaev. I really enjoyed that fight, and I think that the first fight between him and Cutelaba, it was 38 seconds. It was just nothing but chaos. This one, we really got to see Ankalaev's skill set, and that is he's a phenomenal counter striker, man. These guys, when they're in the zone on counter striking, it's so entertaining to watch. He believes in his speed. He sits there and watches the punches come in. He's very, very confident in doing so. I think that that's going to create a lot of fun matchups at that light heavyweight division. Light heavyweight, we talked about this the last, was it the last card? Yeah, we talked about the last card that, John Jones leaving, it's not going to sell a whole lot of pay-per-views anytime soon, but the makeup of the light heavyweight division, very, very fascinating right now. There are a lot of different guys and a lot of different brand new matchups. So it's actually kind of refreshing to have John Jones move up to heavyweight, because I think this light heavyweight division is actually going to be a little bit more fun without him there.
Yeah, the door has been wide open now because he's no longer there anymore. And of course, the champion is Jan Blachowicz. Chael, any other moment you want to talk about, or you good?
No, I enjoyed the whole night. I feel you're setting me up. Okay, look, it was a great night. I've had it with you. What else?
All right, we're done. It was a great night. I would correct you in saying it was a great afternoon, because we had to hammer that point all week long. It was a great afternoon. It was a great main event. Somewhat sad to see, one of the best ever, your heart breaks for him, and sad to see him go. But if you're a fan of MMA, what more could you ask for? What a memorable card UFC 254 was. All right, we appreciate you watching not only tonight, but all week long and all year long. And every time you watch our stuff, we appreciate it wholeheartedly. For Brett, Chael, our entire team, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next week.